Hi all, this is Allmighty and welcome to this video. So this time I bring you something different because eventually I started thinking that okay, mostly I cover games from Fisher, Capablanca and Karpov, and occasionally if you guys suggest something then I'm gladly to reply and give you the analysis of your suggested game. But now, since I've been long doing this, so searching through games, when analyzing, looking at some feature games, I said why not look into one of these games, and this game actually caught my eye. So a game from 1956 in Hamburg, Germany. Paul Keres played against Wolfgang Unzicker. So it was a nice game, so I decided why not to show it. Paul Keres here, I guess probably most of you know him. He is considered to be one of the strongest players who never became a world champion, same as we mentioned for Akiba Rubinstein. But Paul Keres was more of, so Akiba Rubinstein was more of a victim of financials, so didn't have that much money to actually pay for the sometimes for the actually for the challenge and for the match. But on the other hand, Paul Keres was a victim of different circumstances because in the end he was heavily influenced by the then USSR politics, and during his peak years during the 50s and 60s, yeah, essentially the top level of the politics essentially wanted some other players to be the world champions. Keres, even though at a few occasions was considered to be the strongest player in the world, due to some other things, yeah, didn't manage to become the world champion. And it's a shame because he was a very good player at that. On the other hand, here in this game, he's playing against Wolfgang Unzicker, also known as Karpov said, the world amateur champion. So he at occasion did play at the top level tournaments and did win quite a few, but in the end he wasn't ever considered to be at the top, but at least yeah, in the amateur world he was the champion. So yeah, that was pretty much it for the introduction, and let me just show you the game. It is a pretty short game, but it is a nice one, and it features one of the openings that we have seen quite often in this year's candidates. After e4, e5, knight to f3, knight to c6, we go once again for the Ruy Lopez, and we see knight to f6, castles, and now knight to e4. So going for the Berlin defense. d4, and let's see how they played Berlin in 1956. Bishop to e7, and now queen to e2, something that I haven't seen on this year's candidates and actually quite in a while. Now this knight is attacked and he goes to d6. First bishop captures on c6, and now pawn from b captures on c6. And after pawn captures on e5, knight goes to b7. So when I first saw this, I thought, okay, this is probably Unzicker is just messing around. This isn't something that you would see, but actually it is a main line and from a different. So when we go through the Berlin defense and when we go through the variations, this is actually yeah, move that is heavily played, and knight does end up on b7. So I was quite surprised by that, and yeah, you learn, I guess, something new every day in chess. Keres continued with knight to c3. We have castles, and after this, knight to d4. Wanting to get knight to f5 to attack this bishop, but bishop to c5. Rook to d4, and after bishop captures, rook captures. Now both of the players got rid of the bishop pair, but in the end, black is still the one who has the doubled pawns. So he tries d5. And Keres replies. He plays pawn captures on d6 and pawn captures on d6. And all of a sudden, going through this variation, we see that we ended up in a position where both of the players kind of get something. Okay, white, okay, picked up maybe more space, but black has an option of pushing d5 and occupying the center with the pawn. So both of the players have something, and I wouldn't say that either of the sides is better than the other. But here Keres goes very, very courageously with b4. So he plays this move, okay, I wouldn't say just to stop c5, because c5 in and of itself positionally isn't the best of moves because it allows knight to d5 at some point. But yeah, probably the plan is also to put the bishop on b2, but it's also a nice expanding move on the queen side. Now we see rook to e8 attacking the queen and bishop to e3 defending. Now bishop to e6 and queen to f3, so attacking this pawn. It needs to be defended, and queen to d7. And now this queen to d7 actually allows a very nice knight to e4. So putting the pressure on the d6 pawn, on the other hand, not allowed, as we previously said, the c5 movement, and also knight to g5 seems like a threat. And all of a sudden, Keres with his move seems like in a really good position. But okay, Unzicker sees a chance and he actually goes for it. So he plays bishop to f5 at this point, and here in this position, Keres decides knight to g3 is the right move. And it actually is. So your knight was attacked twice, and if you don't want only exchanges in this game and then going to a more drawish and drawish endgame, you essentially have to make some sacrifices. And here, Keres tempts Unzicker to capture the pawn on c2. And he does. Bishop captures on c2, and now rook to c1. Bishop to a4. So Unzicker did want a pawn, but at what price? Now is actually the moment when the fun starts. So as you can see, all of Keres' pieces are active, while on the other hand, this bishop is only defending the pawn, this knight is out of the game, and this rook is also kind of out of the game. While all of Keres' pieces are actually doing something, and now it's time for the attack. Knight to h5. Also possible was knight to f5, maybe a more active square, but knight to h5 is also not bad. And to actually stop the attacks and kind of bring the defense to the king's side, here Unzicker plays f5. And and now we will see how the castle crumbles bit by bit, and how actually Keres helps it. Because now rook to f4, attacking this pawn twice. After playing f5, Unzicker now plays rook to e7, so adding defender to the g7 pawn, but also not actually paying attention to the f5 pawn. So he did win a pawn, but immediately he gave up one back. Rook captures on f5. Actually, I thought, so when analyzing the game, I thought that he planned to do this rook to e7, rook to f7 maneuver. So this is why he actually sacrificed this pawn. But he didn't see this brilliant idea, which actually Keres saw. Knight captures on g7. And what will happen now? So if a rook captures on f5, then you just lost a piece. Then you just lost another pawn and your king is wide open. So knight will just capture on f5 and everything is good for white. So here, to avoid this, Unzicker plays rook to g7. And as you can see, just in a couple of moves, the castle crumbled and the king is wide open. So Keres tries to take advantage of that. He plays bishop to h6. And now, what can you do? The rook is attacked. If you play something like rook to g6 to attack the bishop, this comes with a checkmate in 2. So definitely not a move such as this one. If you play rook to f7, then nothing stops white from playing rook to g5. If you have to essentially play rook to g7. If you play king to h8, then queen to c3, and this is just lost. Checkmate in 2 once again. So this is why you cannot play either of these moves. You essentially have to give up the rook. We have queen to e7, and now bishop captures on g7. Queen captures on g7, and as you can see, the king is wide open, and Keres wants to take advantage of that. Even though he has a rook for 2 pieces, he is in a much better position because all of these pieces are just, as I said, out of the game. h4, planning to play rook to g5, so h6, and rook to c4. And in this position, actually, Unzicker resigned the game because the threat is the same, rook to g4. And if you move the king, nevertheless, the rook will come, the other rook will come on f7, maybe on f8, and checkmate will follow soon. So yeah, this is this very short game, but a sweet game with a very important lesson in it. Don't give up the pawns in front of your king. And one other lesson, if you pick up the pawn, definitely check out what price needs to be paid for picking up the pawn. So is it just a free pawn, or do you give too much activity for white? Okay, here in this position when bishop captured on c2, so it was just a couple of moves ago, it doesn't seem that white have that much for it. So rook to c1, if you move the bishop back, then okay, queen will capture on c6 and white will have much more activity. But the queens will be at least exchanged. But this bishop to a4 kind of loses it all. So Unzicker was kind of greedy there and wanted the pawn, but in the end he didn't manage to succeed to fight off Keres' chances in the attack. So yeah, Essentially, this is pretty much it for this video. I would like to thank you for watching it, and I'll see you next time.